But the thing was, is that when I stepped away from that job, it was the first time I actually felt safe
Mm,
for the first time in a long time.
yeah.
All right, we're live.
Hello, everybody. We are live, and my name is Ashley Evans, and I am a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. So excited to be here with you today. I am here with Jezel and Reese. I'm going to let Jezel and Reese introduce themselves, and then we'll get started.
So, hi everyone. My name is Jezel Rosa. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner. I also make YouTube videos on mental health and educating patients on mental health topics. And it's called Level Headed Mind, which is also the
So
name of my
excited
practice, which I'll be launching
I am here with
on
Jezel.
April 4th.
And hi, my name is Risi, and I am a health and wellness coach and also a social worker. And I have a signature program, Emotional Detox, but I also help frontline providers to deal with burnout and come out of this deep hole we have, dug ourselves into. And hopefully we'll be able to heal and distress so that we can live our lives and be normal again.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Reese. Really appreciate you for being here, and Jezel as well. As you all know, those of you who are with us live tonight, please, we want to hear from you. If you are there, please make sure to say something in the chat box. Let us know you're there. If you have questions, feel free to ask your questions. We would love to know where you're from, so feel free to put the city and state that you are in, so that we can give you a shout out once you come in. Okay. So we're going to get started. 2 weeks ago, Jezel and I brought to you our very first video. It actually, was it a video or was it an audio? I can't
That
remember,
was the
Jezel.
audio.
It was an
The fir-
audio. Okay. Yeah. And so 2 weeks ago, we came to you all in an audio. It was amazing. Okay. Like, the environment, the willingness of people to speak up and to be very transparent about how they're feeling. The psychological safety, that you all felt during that particular session, it was off the charts. We really appreciate your vulnerability and your ability to really just, quite frankly, go there. Okay. Because we know it's difficult. So, what we wanted to do essentially is we want to provide a space for you all to come and to share and to, you know, release the burnout that you feel, to release the pressure that you feel, to get some real, advice, some real advice about this issues that we've all faced. We've been there, and we can help each other get to the other side. And that's exactly what Jezel and I are wanting to do. But tonight we have a very special broadcast where Jezel is going to tell her personal story of experiencing burnout. And she didn't know at the time that that's actually what it was. So we're going to go through her story in just a moment. And then we will follow her story by Reese's special story that she has to share tonight. Very powerful stories. And I'm so grateful that these women are bold enough and brave enough to give their account of their personal life. So please, Jezel, so nice of you to be the first one up tonight. So
Yeah.
I know that you started in a new position just before COVID, maybe 6 to 8 months before
Mhm.
COVID, hit the United States. Kind of just walk us through what was going on at that time.
So yeah, the summer of 2019, I was promoted to the clinical nurse leader at a facility where I had been working as an RN part-time. So this was a full-time role. And this facility is like a standalone crisis stabilization unit. It has 22 beds, and it's crisis stabilization and detox. And at the time, we were also going through a renovation of the nurses station. It was an exciting time. And we didn't have a leader for, I want to say it was 2 years until I stepped up to the role. And so there were a lot of challenges in creating education. We had a lot of new nurses and things of that nature, but I was certainly up for the challenge. I was excited about the role, started creating a lot of educational content for them. As you know, I like to do that as as my YouTube channel is. It's all about education. So
Absolutely.
I was creating little things like that. And in our meetings, making sure that everybody was on the same page, and things were going very, very well. But then, as you all know, COVID came in 2020. And because this is a crisis stabilization unit that is standalone, and that means that we are not connected to a hospital, we have no extra support. As far as nursing goes, we were the only nursing department of that kind within the organization that owned that unit. And so I was looked at as the person to come up with these protocols. Because we're not connected to a hospital or looked at as a hospital, we, beyond standard precautions, did not have anything like isolation rooms or isolation gowns and things of that nature. And so it was up to me to start implementing these policies, creating them from scratch. And it was very challenging because things were constantly changing. If you guys recall in the very beginning, I guess even now it seems like things are always changing when it comes to COVID. But especially in the beginning, there were a lot of unknowns and a lot of fears. And so I started seeing this transpire amongst the staff as well. So I felt like I was doing pretty well with this new challenge that came about. However, during this time, we also had several patients, 4 at one time, in fact, who were very violent and creating, they call it the milieu, the environment of a unit, and creating a very hostile milieu. And because the nurses station was being renovated, it was like we were blocked from being able to see them very well. And so somebody was always on the one side with the patients, and then the other side, which was the makeshift nurse station, was like you had to look through the camera to see. You couldn't see directly through because of the construction. So anyhow, it created this environment of feeling very unsafe. And I started seeing fear in the staff, and I started noticing, like, everybody was on edge. And I started advocating for some trauma-informed, counseling or care for the nurses. However, what I failed to mention was I was actually starting to experience some symptoms. At this point in time, I started waking up feeling lightheaded and dizzy. I didn't have much of an appetite. I was having loose stools just about every morning. I was fainting. I thought it was my blood sugar. I thought it was my blood pressure. I was thinking it was everything than what it really was. And I just kept pushing through and just kind of struggling with this on my own, and feeling like I just had to be strong, because the other nurses who I consider front line, they're the ones on the unit all the time. They needed the help more than me. So I didn't want to like put myself in that role, like, I'm struggling, guys, I need help, when I saw their suffering. And so I put them in front of me. And that was one of the first lies that I told myself. I told myself that their suffering was more important than my own. I realize it now that, I need to put my suffering and my symptoms in the forefront. But at that time, going through it, I thought it would have showed poor leadership. So
Mm.
I continued moving forward. These clients that we had, they, like I said, there was 4 at one time, and then they would come and go, be discharged, and then they'd come back. So there was a lot of tension involved in that as well. And then I also, during this time, was going through my psychiatric nurse practitioner program.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was in my final semester of school. And so, or not my, before clinical. So it was my last clinical before my internship.
Mm.
And each clinical that we had a case study to write. And it was the same instructions each semester. So it,
Mhm.
I write up my case study, and I think I did everything the way it was supposed to be done. I submitted it, and I got a call. I got back to my office, and I had a call from my professor, and I thought that was really strange. Why is she calling me? So I called her back, and she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she explained to me my mistake. Basically, what I did was I took a patient that I had already wrote a note on and did the case study on that patient. And you're supposed to use a new patient, not a
Mhm.
patient that used to, because you also submit notes on different patients. And I couldn't believe it. And I was like, okay. And then in my mind, I thought, well, I've done that. That's the way I've always done it. I've always done the assignment that way. Isn't that the way it's always done? Like, I couldn't believe
Mhm.
that this was happening. And and she said, well, let me check, because your professor last time was new. Let me see, like maybe, maybe that it was their mistake. And, I said, yeah. So then I hung up with her and I started scrambling, going back to my previous assignments. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh. And I started looking back and I'm like, no, she's right. Like
Wow.
never done that before. And I'm like, where did I get this idea that that's how this assignment was supposed to be? So I
Wow.
called her back and I said, I am so sorry. And I started breaking down and I was like, and then I just told her what was like going on. I was like, I'm struggling at work. I'm doing, I'm not feeling good. And I was telling her I had to drive an hour and a half to clinicals. That's one way. So 3 hours every day, two days out of the week. And then the other 3 days I was working 12-hour shifts at the unit. And she just says, honey, you're experiencing burnout. This is burnout,
Mm.
like that's, and I was like, I just paused for a minute and I was like, okay. Um, and I said, all right. And then I was like, well, what do we do now? Because this would have given me
Yeah.
a 0 on the assignment. And I was ready to take it if that's what was going to happen. I would have had to redo the semester. But she showed me a lot of grace. And she went back to the head the head of the department.
The
And then,
dean.
yeah, and then came back and told me that I just had to redo the one assignment and it was fine.
Praise God.
So I was grateful for that. But the one thing that I didn't share with her was that I was also suffering other symptoms because as this was progressing, going on and on and on, what happened to me was I had a trauma when I was a young child that I really didn't have much recollection of. Um, some of my family members recall it, but I never really remembered this. And during this period of time, right before this assignment and everything had happened, I started having nightmares and memories and flashbacks of the trauma. So at this point in time, I knew I was experiencing, PTSD. And I did not want to share that. And I
Mhm.
basically, this was the other lie I told myself. I'm a mental health professional. So why should I be experiencing a mental health illness? Or if I am, I should be able to fix it. And so I hid it. After this time, after crying and breaking down to my professor and realizing like the stress level of it, I did go see a therapist, and thankfully, with her help, I was able to come to terms with what was really happening. And through different modalities like guided imagery and EMDR, the nightmares did stop. Now,
Mm,
I still would have flashbacks daily, and I just didn't feel safe. My husband and I, our relationship at that time was very rocky as well because I had no interest in being intimate, which is another sign of burnout. It's an early sign, but also with what I was going through with the PTSD symptoms as well. And so things were pretty tough.
mm,
And then I came to terms and I realized that this is not just burnout, this is now beyond burnout.
mhm,
And I had to make a very, very big decision. And that was I had to leave my job, and I had
mhm.
to choose my mental health over my job. And it was one of the hardest things I had to do. And I feel as though, like, even at this is another lie that I told myself that I was a failure because I couldn't continue with that job. But the thing was is that when I stepped away from that job, it was the first time I actually felt safe
Mm,
for the first time in a long time.
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We really appreciate you for being so open and willing, Jezel, to tell your story. It's powerful. And I don't want you to diminish what you went through, my dear. It was a lot. Okay. There's so much that I want to unpack, but I also don't want to stress you either
Okay.
with asking you a lot of questions. Do you want me to move on to Reese, or are you okay?
You can ask me questions. It's
Okay,
fine.
perfect. So, in the beginning, one of the lies that you told yourself was that you are a leader, is that leaders don't show that they need help. And we're here to tell you today, everybody, that no matter what your position is, no matter where you are on the chain of command, whether you are at the lowest ranks or at the very top, you deserve help. That's the first thing that we want to tell you. We want to debunk this notion that, your status at your job um, has created this Superman complex in you to where you don't hurt, you're not injured, you don't feel stress. That's a lie.
Yeah.
And so we want to tell you right now that you cannot stay in the pit that you're in because you feel that there's too many others on the front line that really deserve to get the help. We
Yeah.
all deserve to get the help. There's help for everyone. Okay.
Absolutely.
And we don't want you to stay in the place that you're at. So I'm so glad, Jezel, that you realize that. Okay. And so, moving on, I also want to unpack and just slightly touch on the fact that Jezel says something very important. The burnout, the physical symptoms that she was experiencing, the upset stomach, the inability to sleep, the nightmares. Well, that's more mental, but
Hmm.
the things that she went through, the headaches, the not knowing what was wrong with her, you know, and then, in addition to that, what I wanted to tie that to is that when you have suffered an adverse event in your life, that event is going to come up even if you don't remember what happened.
Hmm.
Okay, because that's exactly what happened to Jezel.
Yeah.
The PTSD, that she touched on, that she says she developed, it was as a result of, stuffing that down for years and years and years. And then when the burnout started happening, it opened up this can of worms. It was like the perfect storm, essentially.
Mhm.
And when you add all of those things in with, you know, the volatile workplace that you were in, the having to create new policies that you weren't even sure were correct, the
Mhm.
not being attached to an actual ED where you could send patients, where you
Mhm.
could send employees,
Mhm.
the, you know, having to essentially be on 24 hours a day because you have so many staff members calling out because
Yeah.
they've either A, gotten COVID themselves, or B, been exposed, or C, they were burned out too, mentally and physically, from having, you know, worked the unit, I'm sure, so many days and shifts in a row.
Mhm.
And what we're here to tell you today is that the body needs rest. If you don't rest, it will throw you into a situation where it's going to get rest because you will, quite frankly, faint.
Yep. And that
You
happened to me several times. I would wake
absolutely.
up and I would just pass out, and I'd be coming back from the bathroom, and my husband would be like, "Are you okay?" And the color would just come out of my face, and I'd be like, "I just have to lay down," and I would just like pass out on the bed, and then he'd be like, "You know, is it your blood pressure? Is it your heart? What's going on?" And I'm like, "I just need to catch my breath." And then I would lay there for like 5, 10 minutes, and I seriously would just get up and force myself to go to work. I
Mm,
said, no, I have to go. I have to show up. Because again, I felt like I needed to be there for them. And I kept thinking, like, you know, they're suffering more than me. And I just got to put this face on, and I've got to, you know, act like everything's cool, because if I break down, everyone's going to break down. And so, you know, it was definitely a very difficult time, but I want to, you know, I share my story because I want people to know, because I know there's other people like that, that you're going through the same thing. You're dealing with, you know, different stressors in your life, whether it be from work, from home, from school, or a combination of the three. And you're telling yourself lies. You're telling yourself that you're strong. You're telling yourself that there can't, you know, possibly be something wrong with you. And you're just ignoring and pushing it down. And like Ashley said, what happened to me was my body said, no, you know,
yeah,
like you need to
absolutely.
stop. And it was a huge, huge warning for me. And like I said, once I removed myself from the stressor and I started feeling safe and started working more in therapy, all of the symptoms of PTSD, not just the nightmares, all of it, the flashbacks, the hypervigilance, the anxiety, it went away.
Mm,
And that was very profound for me. And then
Mhm.
I started doing some research into burnout and PTSD and trauma, and you know, which is one of the reasons why I'm passionate about this, is
mm-hmm.
because, you know, I wonder if I would have caught this sooner, if it would have progressed as far as it did,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, because you can stop and take breaks, open up, communicate with your staff, communicate with your leaders. You know, that's one thing I regret doing. I never told them that I was suffering. You know, when I put my resignation and I did say, you know, I'm burnt out, but the reply I got was everybody's burned out because of COVID. And I didn't go into details of what was happening as far as the PTSD. At that point, like I said, I just felt I was a failure. And, you know, I felt I was leaving that role as a failure. But I look back on it now and I realize that I made the best decision for my mental health, number one. Number two, I also learned that emotional intelligence comes from knowing your symptoms, acknowledging them, and confronting them and letting other people know. So I wasn't really showing that I was strong by going into work like that and pretending I was good. I was actually showing weakness.
Mm,
To be strong would be to confront it, to announce that this is happening, to let people know I need a break. I'm a human being and I am falling right now and I need
Yeah,
help. I need support. And this is what's going on with me.
sure,
That shows emotional intelligence and emotional strength. And I
sure.
realize that now. So when I do start feeling pressures and I start feeling some of those symptoms, I pause and I say, okay, this is when I need to take my break. I need to do either mindfulness meditation or just sit down, sit out in the sun, get some light, because I work from home, so I'm inside a lot, and I know a lot of times getting just sun from the vitamin D from the sun can just boost your mood. And so I do things like that. And as we mentioned in previous lives, on our mentally fit one, sleep is very, very important. And I definitely make sure that I practice my sleep hygiene as well to make sure that
Yeah,
because that's the first sign. Like that, I didn't mention that, but I was at first before the nightmares came. I was definitely having restless nights and thinking, did I make the right choice here? Did I put the right thing in there? I was constantly on the CDC website because it was changing all the time. And so yeah, I had a lot of restless nights as well, which I think contributed to all of the sequelae of symptoms that I experienced.
absolutely. Um, One other thing that I wanted to say is that, I hope that you have released the guilt that you have felt at that time, Jezel. The reason why I really hope you've released that, because we hold on to guilt, ladies, okay? We hold on to it. We women, we think we're the strongest people in the world, and we are strong. But at the same time, you do have moments where you need to refuel yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Do to yourself, because you will go empty if you're not filling yourself back up. And so, at the time, Jezel, you had no psychological safety. You were afraid to speak up,
Yeah.
okay? Because the powers that be, you knew they were overwhelmed too. And
Mm-hmm.
so, they may not have been on the front line, but you know what they say, what rolls downhill? It's always, the symptoms continue to roll downhill. The smell rolls downhill. You can't get away from it. They may have been snug as a bug inside their offices, but they were feeling the crunch. They were.
Mm-hmm.
It was just in a different way. Okay. And so the crunch that you felt, the burnout that you felt, was a burnout where you actually physically saw, patients who were well one day, diagnosed a day later, and probably dead, within a day or two after that. That's the reality that you were working in at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want you to release the fact that you had no control over the fear that had been instilled in you because of COVID. It was a COVID fear, is what it was.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate you for everything that you encountered and how you were able to get through that situation. Okay.
Thank
And
you.
so we'll talk some more about, how you protect your, let's say yourself, in terms of self care and your sleep hygiene routine. We'll talk about some of those things after Miss Reese finishes. Well, after she shares her story. So, Miss Reese, I wanted to go into your story as well. We still have about 30 minutes. So, I would love to find out from you. I know today is a day that is very symbolic for you, Miss Reese, because 2 years ago today is when you started a 14-day, essentially, quarantine with several patients. So please, we would love to hear your story.
Thank you, Ashley and Giselle. Honestly, I am just so elated that you, for your self disclosure, because I believe 100% that your share will liberate many frontline providers. And because we are all wired for problem solving, it's hard to admit that I can't solve me. So, like you said, 2 years ago, March 17th. I work as a counselor with people with developmental disability, a 14-bed group home. Around March 12th, somebody visited home and came back feeling like, the flu symptoms. And around the 14th, there were again, loose bowels and stuff like that. But when we, what we were hearing was not the symptoms of COVID. So, we thought, people were just having maybe just simple outbreaks. And I worked the overnight shift on the 16th, and I was the one who called 911 for an older gentleman whom I found on the floor in his room, like sort of frozen. It was a very scary sight to behold. So I called, and the ambulance came, and they were like, "Oh, the hospitals are overwhelmed," and they took him. And then a few hours later, we all got a call that those of us who worked, I would say within the week, with all their symptoms have been exposed, so we need to quarantine. And I don't have a younger child, but of course I have a husband. So I came home and I said, you know what, no matter what, I would need to quarantine, and I don't want to put you at risk, but I know the facility is a 24-hour facility. So, and they need help, people with the developmental disability. We had almost an older population with comorbidities, So I said, you know what, let me go and quarantine with them. At least then I can be proactive with their doctors and connect, because the hospitals, actually, we had the one who had the first symptom go to the ER. It was crowded. They sent her home. So the hospitals were not going to keep them. That's the key. And even if, when they came and the man was really helpless, that's the only reason why they took him, because they would have left him and say, you know what, maybe do telehealth. We cannot accommodate any of that.
Wow.
So I checked in March 17th, and then the nightmare began, because with one colleague, everyone who was asked whether they would even volunteer said no. And I, understandably so, because people were afraid. So 24/7, caring for them, doing telehealth, negotiating medication protocols, even as asking for things like Z-Pack. And I mean, you are on your feet, and when you are not on your feet doing all that and helping them feel comfortable. And of course, with developmental disabilities, they didn't even know the reason why they were quarantining. They didn't know the reason why they have to stay in their rooms. So like you said, we were having behavior issues and outbursts with all the different things. And when you are done doing all of that, you are also serving the meals, cooking, making sure, because nobody is coming in. Nobody,
Everything.
everybody is afraid, and
Mm,
everybody stayed away. So you do this depleted, maybe sometimes midnight, before you can catch a break.
mm,
But even in that, when I was leaving home, I've always, because of my health and wellness background, I
mhm,
always, like we all keep sick boxes. So I always have a wellness box. It had
mm,
some protocols in it. So I picked that thing up and took it. And every night we will open it up, me and my colleague, and we'll use the protocols. We will do steam inhalation, because since the virus was going to those airways in our eyes, our ears, and all these places where there is opening, when we put those essential oils in the steam and we put a towel around our head, at
mhm.
least we're able to clear those passages for any temporary lodge of any virus.
Wow.
We were taking the crystal vitamin C, we will put it in water,
Mm,
5,000 milligrams. I mean, literally to flush our systems every single day.
wow.
But then 3, 4 days into the work, I started feeling lightheadedness. I went to a dark place. And I was like, wait a second. I felt fear. I will have this cold and hot sweat. I couldn't sleep. It was scary because even when ambulance came, we call, when you measure their oxygen and it's low, and they came to make sure the person is okay because they are not going to take them. They are just coming in to, do a few things and leave. People made the sign of the cross. They
Mm.
enter into the place and they are making the sign of the cross, and you live there. So
Wow.
I was gripped with fear. And even my coworker began to show symptoms. So it was very, very, very scary. Even our director, who, because my coworker showed symptoms, who came to the hallway to check on us, he went home and caught COVID that
Oh.
very day. He didn't go any far. He was by the door. So, and at that time, we didn't even know that because it was that contagious and airborne.
Mm-hmm.
So this fear and trepidation, and I didn't even want to close my eyes because either the people we support, it was a 14 bed, 3 were in the hospital. So we had 11 having behaviors. Why can't I go out? Waking out, having our best at night. And so you don't get sleep. And yet in the morning, you do it all over again and all over again, over and over again. It was scary. But in the middle of all of that, knowing how dark my mind was getting, I made a decision to enroll in clinical social work. And I did that.
Wow.
And I did that because I knew that those of us on the front lines will need support. We will need something more than just that pep talk. Yes, it was beautiful when people at 7 p.m. will come out of their windows and, cheering, frontline workers and providers on. But I knew we would need more than that. And so even at this point, I have a semester shy to complete that. But walking through that darkness, that dark alley, as Giselle shared, again, emotional intelligence is you recognizing that really there is something going on with you
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and finding that space. But for me, the scary piece is even when I put in these crazy, ridiculous hours and overextended myself. On April 2nd was the day I was supposed to come home.
Mm-hmm.
I've done the
14 days
14
later,
days.
right?
So I came home on April 2nd. April 3rd, I got a call. When are you coming back?
Oh my God.
I was like, what? Said nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to come here. And I was frustrated, angry,
Yeah.
and upset. Like, what are you saying?
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? I can't come and hold down the same way, but I will come in maybe 12 hours,
Mm.
but I'll have to go back home. And so that also continued for a good while. And like Giselle said, it affects your relationship because you are jittery, your family.
Sure.
The smile is gone. You don't know. Actually, I didn't know which day, everything was just flat for me. I
Wow.
didn't even know the days of the week. It was just blurry and just, like you said, getting up and going. And that was all there was for me.
Mm.
But I went and remember at that time PPE was also scarce. So you are doing this type of work with one mask and you are being told, how to clean it up and use it over and over again. So the
Sure. Sure.
psychological toll and the emotional toll, and it was heavy.
Sure.
But there is a way out. We keep sick boxes, and my call to action for all of us is let's begin to keep wellness boxes because Giselle, as you shared about those sleepless nights, when I infuse the lavender, it knocks me out. When I wake up and I order that green juice that has celery and green apple and spinach, and I open up a capsule of turmeric and I throw it in. It's all sort of helping. So some of these basic things are some of the things we need to do. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Miss Reese, for sharing that very powerful story. Who knew? I know you didn't. You had no idea that the wellness box that you had been creating, to keep yourself just well overall. You had no idea that they would come in so handy, so clutch for you and the other staff, and I'm sure probably some of the patients as
Yes.
well, because you know what, during that time, literally you had to do whatever you had to do to survive.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't this, I got to call the doctor for an order. You know what I'm saying? It was, we have to make sure that these people stay alive. This
Exactly.
is a matter of life and death. And
Mhm.
so I implore you both, please take care of your mental health going forward. I understand that you all have been exposed to such horrific scenes, and the fear, and as you said, the trepidation, the the inability to get any time to yourself, the cognitive overload that you must have felt. I can't even imagine. And so the reason why I implore you to continue to guard your mental health is because the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy.
Mhm.
He does. And he comes when we think we're completely well. And I'm not trying to preach here, but I am telling you that there are times when we're thinking everything's okay, we're lovely, we're peaches, we're cream and strawberries. But what I am telling you is something can trigger you in the blink of an eye. And
Mm.
because of that adverse event that you were exposed to, Ms. Reese and Giselle, you
Mhm.
all will always have, this susceptibility to be triggered. But
Mm.
if you're using those wonderful mindful practices, like you all are talking about the lavender, breathing. We haven't done a whole bunch of talking about it. We're going to, spend the next few minutes talking about how we can guard ourselves from experiencing burnout. And if we do experience burnout, how you can pull yourself out of that pit. That's what we're going to talk about in just a moment. But one other thing I wanted to highlight here for you, Miss Reese, COVID may have taken so many things away from you, right, Ms. Reese? COVID may have taken so many things away from you, right, Giselle? But
Mm.
there are some things that you did gain as a result of COVID that
Exactly.
you may not have gained had COVID not happened.
Mhm.
And for you, Miss Reese, it propelled you towards your career.
Yes.
Mhm.
Amen.
Yeah.
I am so thankful that, as a result of that experience, that you understood your assignment on this earth was to serve others,
Mhm.
was to be a servant leader. And what an experience to drive you into that kind of decision. And so I know that the time that you had was indescribable, but I'm so thankful that you know your purpose. And
Exactly.
for that, I will be, and I'm sure you will be too, eternally grateful. And for Giselle, it has, I'm sure, taught you the power of the mind, the
Mm.
power of the body if you're not getting rest. It has propelled you
Mhm.
to be an advocator of learning, of education, of, teaching people about your bodies, teaching people the physiology behind different things that plague us. That's a gift. And
Mm.
you have that gift. But maybe if COVID had not happened, maybe you would have still been a nurse manager on that unit,
Mm,
or maybe you would have just been an NP. Not to say that there's anything wrong with either one of those things. But what
mhm.
I'm saying is that you now have a platform. You know what you stand for. You know what you stand against. And there's nothing like having a voice, from a very learned experience that you can speak from.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so
Yeah.
I wanted to move ahead, and talk for the next few minutes. And if anyone has anything to comment on, or any questions, please tell us in the chat box. Are you seeing anything, Giselle?
I haven't seen anything. No.
Okay, I'm afraid that maybe it's not actually airing on the other side, because while
Mm.
we've been talking, I've gotten a few messages saying, "Oh, I thought you were going live at 6." And so I'm
Oh.
not sure if it didn't come up on my feed.
Mm.
I tried to copy it and paste it in my feed, but be that as it may, we will still be able to share this later in a different way. So what
Absolutely.
I want to do for the audience at this time is to go over how we can um, guard our minds and our bodies,
Mhm.
as best as we possibly can. Even today, when I did my video this morning, I talked about sleep. Tomorrow is World Sleep Day, right?
Mhm.
And so one of those things that I just want to talk to you about right now, and we'll go around round robin and we'll do one a piece. But sleep is essential.
Mhm.
It is so important. How many of you know that if you don't get enough rest, you can become psychotic?
Mhm.
You
Yes.
can.
Yep.
You will start hallucinating.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You will start seeing things that are not there, hearing things that no one else can hear, feeling things crawl on your skin, smelling things that no one else can smell. Okay.
Mhm.
And so that is one of the reasons why, just getting enough sleep is so important, is to be able to cognitively rebound, reset. The body is it's just awesome. But when you're asleep at night, the body is repairing itself. The
Mhm.
brain is repairing itself. The cells are doing their thing. Giselle can explain this much better than me. Okay. But essentially, the cells, the body, it is carrying all of the nutrients where it needs to go. It's working on metabolism, it's working on immunity, and it's doing it double time.
Mhm.
Okay. And it's not going to do it if you're not getting the rest that you need. It's allowing your body to fight against illness
Yep.
for you to get rest. Okay.
Yeah, sleep is
And
an immune booster, right?
I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
I said sleep is an immune booster.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's
Mhm.
essential. You cannot, go days and days and days without rest. If you have problems resting at night, I urge you to please go see your doctor. But there are things that you can even do over the counter, or there are things that you don't even have to digest. Reese and Giselle, they are both believers in lavender, as am I.
Mhm.
I love
Mhm.
lavender.
Mhm.
Lavender, there are actually roll on lavenders that you can roll on your neck, your chest. There's
Mhm.
oils that you can put on your skin. There's lotions you can put on your skin to smell that lavender scent. There's candles you can light. Taking a hot bath before you go and
Mhm.
rest at night, it calms you.
Yep.
Okay, so that's one example, and then we're gonna move to Giselle. Giselle.
Well, we have a comment here from Renee Grant. She says she's here, and she says that it happened to her before when she just had her child and wasn't getting enough sleep, and she was starting to smell things and see things. So
Mm,
it's true. So yeah,
yeah. Thank
it's
you so
very,
much,
very
Renee.
true. Yeah, thank
Thank
you for
you.
being here.
Absolutely. And
Absolutely.
thank you for sharing. We appreciate that.
Yeah. So,
And so Giselle's going to share, something else that that we can do to guard ourselves.
so another thing that I learned through all of this, I learned a lot about resiliency, and how to build resiliency within us against these types of stressors. And one of the things that is true across all the resiliency courses and certifications that I've had was mindfulness meditation. And basically, just it doesn't have to be 10 minutes a day. You just start with 1 minute, and then you
Mm,
can progress slowly each day. But it's all about being able to have that time to relax and to be in the present moment and not have your mind unraveling and thinking about all the things that you need to do and should do and all of that. What happens is with mindfulness is you focus on one thing. A lot of times it's the breath, but it could be anything. You just focus about being present in the moment. You could be mindful with eating a grape, you know, but it's all about just being present and blocking out the distractions, the thoughts when they come, acknowledging that that's just a thought, and then continuing to focus on your thing that you've decided was going to be your intention to focus on. And when you do this, it actually has been shown to create new pathways in your brain. When you are constantly being stressed, it triggers that HPA axis that I talked about before, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which increases cortisol and creates this whole big inflammatory process all throughout your body. But that triggers the amygdala as well, the fear center, which makes us a little more anxious and hypervigilant. Practicing mindfulness can actually quiet that down and have you think more in the prefrontal cortex and more reasoning behind your thoughts instead of just going right to catastrophic thinking or right into worst case scenarios or negative thinking or thought distortions of any kind. Practicing that mindfulness allows you to be present, and it gives you that moment of peace. And with daily practice, when you are involved in like something that's very stressful, you can easily step away from that stressor and just take that 1 minute to be mindful. And you can go from being up here with your stress to right down here very, very quickly.
thank you, Giselle. Reese, would you like to
Yes.
share?
And yet, what Giselle just shared is so difficult for us to do. It's so difficult for us to quiet our minds and still our bodies. And,
Mm,
yeah. So I love the fact that you said it takes a minute. And I have actually developed something called the STOP method, where the S means literally slow down and then start taking the breath. And as Giselle said, once you start taking the breath, you are telling that parasympathetic nervous system that, hey, there is nothing to fight, flee, or freeze about. You are telling the sympathetic nervous system to take over, that it's time to just rest and relax. And the O in the stop method is observing why you feel the way you feel. So once you slow down and you can take those breaths and you are calming down, why do I feel the way I feel? Why am I thinking about this piece? And if you have time in that moment to process, then you do. If you don't, the P can be process or pause. That means you have another time to go back and reshuffle. And that is actually what kept me sane when I was doing these crazy hours. Because as we know, our body keeps the score. So if I could go through the slowdown and taking those breaths and beginning to say, why do I feel jittery? Yes, I'm afraid. I'm afraid because of COVID. I'm afraid because of the uncertainty. Then I'm actually processing the feeling and not shoving it down. And that actually does wonders. And if you graduate from 2 minutes, this process can take a whole 20 minutes.
sure.
Wow.
And anxiety lowers, your body begins to regain those locus of controls, and the amygdala literally doesn't have that opportunity to be in charge all the time. So
Mm.
yeah, there are protocols, there are things, and also my emotional detox.
Mhm.
We start with personal history because you see, as Giselle shared, even things that we are so detached from, right, can creep up as triggers. So we go all the way to uproot those stuff, and then we deal with them, and then we start the replacing, using some CBT protocols and things that help us. But what is cool about my emotional detox is if you are faith centered, we pull the strings of faith so that you
Amen.
can express yourself in your faith tradition. And it is
Amen.
effective, it is therapeutic, and it brings you that healing. Because for me, what actually made me pivot for the mental health clinical piece is what this is doing to families. I have a young woman who is taking care of her sister's children. The sister is a traveling nurse. She's like, she doesn't smile anymore.
Mm.
The spark is gone out of her life. And we might, somebody describe making so much money and being miserable as wearing a golden handcuff. And most people are
Mm.
wearing these golden handcuffs and yet depleted and lost. And it's taking a toll on their relationships. And for me, that is the heartbreak. And so this is a one-stop shop, literally. We are not only talking about these things, but we have the answers too and the solution. So reach out. And I just want
Absolutely.
to be a part of this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Miss Reese, for sharing your story. Thank you, Giselle, for sharing your story. I'm gonna close us out over the next few minutes. Ladies, please chime in if you feel led. But what I want to say is this: you're not alone. You are not alone. There are so many people who have stories just like Giselle, have stories just like Miss Reese, and we want you to know that you're not alone. You may feel like you're the only one in the world who has experienced the things that you have experienced. And I understand that you can't unsee those things that you've seen. You can't unfeel what you felt. And you can't unhurt once you've been hurt. But there is help and there is hope. We want you to seek treatment. Go to your primary care physician. Get a referral to a mental health professional. Yes, primary healthcare professionals, they do understand mental health, but it's nothing like a mental health professional taking care of your mental health needs. So we ask you to please go to your PCP. Go and ask for those referrals. Don't be afraid. You have the right to health care. Don't sit around and have the resources and you're not using them. Okay? And the stigma associated with tapping into the resources that you have, we have to debunk those stigmas right now. Because truly, mental health, no matter what you've heard, no matter what you've been told, no matter what, your family forced you to believe as you were growing up in your younger days, you have a right to receive care that's not just physically based, but mentally based as well. Okay? Health is also, it includes mental health and physical health. It's all integrative. You can't have one without the other. One impacts the other. Am I right, ladies?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And so, what we're asking you to do today is to reach out to friends and family members, even if you're not yet comfortable going to see a doctor. Because when you isolate yourself, you make yourself believe you're the only one. And when you make yourself believe the only one, you become more and more depressed. You get deeper and deeper into the pit of despair.
Hmm.
and your thoughts and your mind start running away from you.
Yep.
And that's not where we want you to be. We want to
Yep.
give you hope, encouragement, love, support, grace, space. That's
Hmm.
what we're here to do for you. If you
Absolutely.
want to ever speak with us, be on one of the shows with us, reach out to us. We would love to have you on to share your story. Sometimes it's the sharing of the story that truly gets people to the other side.
Yes.
Yep. And like
Sometimes.
Renee says, there's no shame in getting help.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you,
There's no
Renee.
shame. Yep.
There is no shame.
Hmm.
And so we thank you so much. At 7 o'clock. We want to be respectful of your time. We thank you for being here with us tonight, for listening to these powerful stories from Jezel and Miss Reese. If you have any questions, any comments that you would like to share with us individually, please feel free to do so. I'm Ashley Evans. You know that I'm going to continue to fight for mental health. I'm going to continue to be an advocate for all things mental health, for loving yourself, for you understanding you matter. I'll continue to do it until the stigma is no more. Ladies, please go ahead and say what you would like to say, and we'll sign out.
Just want to say thank you to everybody who's watching this now and on the replay. Thanks for being a part of this. And definitely, like Renee was saying, there's no shame in getting help. And if you're suffering, let somebody know. Help is there for you.
And yes, I am so grateful that there is a safe space to have these discussions. But I also want you to know that we have the resources. You can reach out to me. You can reach out because there are protocols that we can do together to get you on the other side, and they work. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. And we hope you have a wonderful, fantastic, splendid evening, and that you get lots of wonderful sleep tonight and every night thereafter. Have a wonderful day.
Bye. I'll
Bye.
end the broadcast.